So, what really happened there? It was right after I asked that question that my former classmate's face changed. A small kitchen, one that had needed at least some kind of repair for years already. The wallpaper was peeling in places, the table slightly crooked, the light dim and yellowish. Nothing unusual, just the kind of place where people sit, talk, and remember things they maybe shouldn't. We were sitting there together, me and my old friend, my former classmate, eating, drinking a little. We hadn't seen each other for several years, and finally, as they say, we met again. He had recently moved from some god-forsaken rural backwater closer to civilization, and settled down, by the way, not far from me at all. That's how we ran into each other, completely by accident. In a grocery store, didn't think twice, grabbed a bottle of decent brandy, a couple of chocolate bars, and went back to my place for tea. In the warmth of the conversation, I learned a lot about him, and I told him a lot about myself. We laughed, remembered the school years, talked about our classmates, who ended up where, who's doing what now, all the usual things people talk about after years apart. Many of them, of course, stayed back there, in that same village where we grew up. "Hey, what about Victor?" I asked with a slight smile. "Which one? Crevettes?" "Yeah, him. He died a couple of months ago." He said it calmly, but then let out a quiet sigh. "What? Seriously? How?" I asked, surprised. There was a story, a bad one. The whole village was shaken by it. And right then, Artem changed in his face completely. The cheerful, relaxed man sitting across from me just seconds ago, he was gone. It was as if something in his memory had surfaced, something he really didn't want to revisit. He took a cigarette from the pack, his hand trembling slightly, and brought a lit match to it. "I moved here because of that," he said, exhaling slowly, "away from that hole where I wasted half my life. What happened there, God forbid anyone ever sees or hears anything like that." He released a stream of bitter smoke and began his story. I'll say this right away, I couldn't not believe him, although at first I did think maybe he had just had too much to drink and was starting to talk nonsense. But no, from here on, I'll tell it exactly as he told it. Back then, I was still working in law enforcement. Right after finishing the academy, they sent me back to a small village in western Ukraine, made me the local district officer, gave me a jurisdiction, a small office, the usual setup. To be honest, in all those 10 years, I never really understood why I was even needed there. But for me, it was fine. The years counted toward experience, the salary was decent. Sit in your office, play games on the computer, pass the time. Every now and then, something would happen. Drunken fights, someone stealing livestock, nothing serious. I mean, what could possibly happen in a place like that? When they installed a mobile tower, people talked about it for a month straight like it was some historic event. That's how I spent almost 10 years in that office. Just a couple of months more and it would have been a full decade, a damn anniversary. Meanwhile, the village was slowly dying. More and more houses stood empty. Young people were leaving in a rush, chasing a better life somewhere else. And then I had to leave too, after what we all went through there. "Why didn't you leave earlier?" I interrupted. "Because that was my job," he replied shortly. "I asked my superiors to transfer me somewhere else, more than once, but nothing ever came of it." He stubbed out the cigarette and continued. "One time I stayed at the station until late at night. I was watching a movie and fell asleep. Can you imagine? I open my eyes and outside the windows it's completely dark, pitch black. So I get up, get dressed, and start heading home. It was cold that night, really cold. I'm walking down the street half asleep, shivering like a stray dog. Then I notice The gate at old Mrs. Antonova's place is wide open. You probably don't even remember her anymore. At first, I thought about just walking past, but when I reached her fence, I decided to go in and check if everything was all right. The first thing that caught my eye was the front door, wide open, and her dog, whimpering, curled up inside its kennel. I rushed toward the house. "Mrs. Antonova? Are you here? Is everything all right?" Silence. I called again. Nothing. Eventually, I decided to go inside. Kitchen. First room. Second room. No one. Strange, I thought. I went down toward the garden. Maybe she stepped out to the outhouse. It was outside, after all. No one there either. Checked the chicken coop. Nothing. It was like she had vanished into thin air. But the lights were still on inside the house, and the bed, it hadn't even gone cold yet. That didn't look right. Still, despite all that, I didn't raise the alarm. Thought maybe she went to a neighbor's place, maybe needed medicine or something. Forgot to close the door. It happens. So, I went home. But in the morning, nothing had changed. On my way to work, I looked again. The gate, still wide open. The door, still open. That's when it hit me. The old woman was gone. I spent half the day going around the village asking people. No one had seen anything. No one had heard anything. It was as if she had simply disappeared, just like that. In the end, we had to seal the house. That same evening, I called in officers from the nearest city. They arrived early the next morning. I told them everything exactly as it was. A person had gone missing. No signs of forced entry. The gate and the door were open. They spent some time examining the house, then called in emergency services. We had to search for her. A few hours later, they arrived too. The search began. A few volunteers joined from among the locals. I was one of them. We searched until late into the night, the whole village and the forest surrounding it almost from all sides. There weren't many people, of course. Who would want to come all the way out to the middle of nowhere to look for some old woman? Good thing at least someone showed up. It was around 2 in the morning when we finally found her. Thankfully, we had dogs with us. They picked up the scent. Artem leaned closer to me and spoke quietly. She was gutted, like livestock, and impaled on a branch in a clearing among the trees. A thick pool of blood had formed beneath the tree. I almost threw up from what I saw. But that wasn't even the worst part. The old woman was near the very top of the tree. We stood there, under it, for about 20 minutes, in complete silence. Every single one of us just staring upward, unable to process what we were seeing. Even the dogs, after running around for a bit, lay down nearby and started whining softly. And the place wasn't close either, at least 5 kilometers from the village, maybe more. We thought it through and decided we had to cut the tree down. There was no other way to get the body. She had to be buried. Her body was mutilated beyond recognition. All her ribs were broken, twisted outward, the organs exposed, covered in clotted blood. Her head was barely attached, hanging by what looked like a thin strip of skin. It felt like it could fall off at any second. In all my years of service, I had never seen anything like this. But at that moment, only one question bothered me. Who could have done this? It would take incredible strength to lift a body like that all the way to the top of a tree. It must have been 35 meters high. We managed to get her down, not without effort. She was buried the next day. Closed coffin. After that, my workload increased. For the first time in my service, I was dealing with something like this. Honestly, I didn't know what to do. There wasn't a single lead. And more than that, I simply couldn't understand how anyone could have carried a 90-kilogram body up that high. But it only got worse. Just a few days later, it happened again. A man disappeared. Oleg lived at the far end of the street. The exact same situation. Gate open, door open, no signs. Nothing. We started searching again. Again, the forest, the fields. But this time, we didn't find him that same day. He just vanished. Artyom leaned closer again, his voice dropping almost to a whisper. Believe it or not, but even back then, I had already started thinking that something wasn't right. How could that old woman end up on that tree? It's just not possible. You should have seen how high it was. 3 days later, in the evening, we finally found the man. His body was already stiff, lying in a field near the tree line. Mutilated, just like the old woman. But what was strange, his body was positioned unnaturally, bent forward among the wheat. After the second incident, I was truly afraid. People were disappearing without a trace, and then they were found dead. And not just dead, like that. At first, I thought maybe a maniac had appeared in our area, a serial killer. But then I remembered the old woman on the tree, and that idea didn't make sense anymore. That same evening, the local men armed themselves with whatever they could, pitchforks, axes, flashlights, and went out to look for whoever or whatever was responsible. It looked ridiculous and terrifying at the same time. A group of grown men wandering around in the dark, searching for something they didn't even understand. And I went with them. Of course I did. I was the officer after all. First, we searched the entire village. Then we moved towards the fields, and from there into the tree line. We combed through it. We were already thinking of heading back when suddenly one of the men pointed his flashlight towards the field. I swear, there's something there. I immediately turned my head, and maybe 5 meters away from us, very close, something moved. You could hear it clearly in the silence of the night. We all stared in that direction, and then, from the wheat, suddenly, a bald head appeared, and a few seconds later, in the beam of the flashlight, something slowly rose. Something that looked like a human. Artem's hands trembled slightly as he took out another cigarette. "What do you mean, looked like?" I asked. "In the most direct sense," he replied quietly. "It wasn't human. It stood on 2 legs, but it was hunched over. Its cheekbones were sharp, unnatural. Its mouth round, and from it, 6 long, sharp fangs were sticking out. Its nose looked like that of a corpse that had been lying unburied for years. And its eyes, 2 glowing yellow lights, no pupils. Its body, otherwise, looked human. I don't even understand how we hadn't noticed it earlier while we were walking there. And then things became completely unimaginable. We didn't stare at each other long. The creature let out a scream, a loud, piercing scream that froze the blood in your veins. It echoed. It felt like it spread for kilometers. And then it rushed towards us, fast. Too fast. It rushed straight at us. In a split second, the creature leapt onto Stepanich. His beam of the flashlight went out immediately, and he himself collapsed to the ground, choking in his own blood. That sound, I still remember it to this day. After what we saw and heard, our entire small, so-called brave group scattered in all directions. Everyone ran, and I ran too, wherever my eyes led me. But I didn't get far. It was dark. The men with flashlights had already scattered. I turned around, trying to escape, ran straight into the tree line, and didn't see the tree right in front of me. At full speed, I slammed into it, fell backwards onto the ground. My vision doubled. My head was pounding. But even like that, I saw it. I saw the creature chasing me. It was running on all 4s, easily jumping over ditches, fallen branches, anything in its path. Right then, lying under that tree, I thought I was going to die. Honestly, I sat there thinking, that's it. This is where it ends. No more Artem, the district officer. It jumped on me about 20 seconds later, grabbed me with its hands. It kept trying to bite me in the neck. With what little strength I had left, I tried to resist, tried to push it away, but it was unbelievably strong. It growled, low and angry, and then it sunk its teeth into me. Not in my neck, but closer to my shoulder.
The pain, it spread through my entire body. So sharp, so intense, I couldn't hold back a scream. I don't know how it happened. Maybe adrenaline, maybe something else, but somehow I managed to kick it off me. I pulled my service pistol from its holster, pulled the trigger. A loud crack echoed. My ears rang instantly. The creature jumped back, letting out a shrill scream. I fired again, but missed. And before I could even blink, it was gone. The last thing I saw was the nearby bushes moving, then silence. I lay there under that same tree for a while, still not believing what had just happened. My shoulder hurt badly. It was bleeding heavily. I tore a piece off my shirt and tried to wrap it around the wound. It helped, a little. Eventually, I pulled myself together, got to my feet, and started walking home as fast as I could, all the while afraid that I might run into that thing again. Listening to him, I felt chills run down my spine. Even I was getting goosebumps. Artem lit the same cigarette he had been holding earlier, and continued. I made it back to the village late at night. Barely got out of that damn tree line. Couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. You could have poked your eye out and still seen nothing. I really wanted to look every one of those men in the eye. The ones who had so bravely organized that hunt. The ones who ran like rats and left me behind. But that's another story. I went to the station, changed clothes, properly bandaged my shoulder this time, and then went home. Sleep? There was no question of sleep after that. I sat in my kitchen for hours, drinking coffee, trying to find anything, any information about what I had encountered. With trembling hands, I typed descriptions into search engines, but aside from made-up horror stories, there was nothing. Until I found something that was at least somewhat similar. In an old Slavic legend, it described a creature called an Irka, a malicious, gaunt being from folklore. It was said that in ancient times, people believed suicide was a great sin, and those who took their own lives were condemned to wander the night in the form of this creature. The Irka hunts people, kills them, drinks their blood, trying to restore the life it lost. Its eyes glow in the dark. It looks human, but its body is disfigured, covered in sores, rotting. It hunts only at night, moves quickly, silently, watching its victim for a long time before attacking. Exactly what I saw. But the most important part, you must never look at it, never turn towards it. That's what it wants. A person freezes, and then it can do whatever it wants. It can speak, confuse its victim, mimic voices. It usually lives in fields, but sometimes it can enter human homes. After reading all that night, I almost lost my mind. People don't just make things like that up for no reason. Someone must have seen it before, just like I did. I sat there in the kitchen until morning, didn't sleep at all. During the day, I managed to get a couple hours of sleep at the station.
and that was it. But the next night, that's what forced me to pack my things and leave, as far away from that place as possible, from that field. "What happened that night?" I asked quietly. He looked at me, and after a pause, continued. "I woke up in the middle of the night, from knocking on the window. At first I thought I was dreaming, but then I opened my eyes and realized I wasn't. The knocking was soft, light, and then I heard footsteps outside, quick ones. Then again, knocking, but this time at a different window. And at that moment I already had a feeling of who it might be. But then I heard a voice, Victor's voice. That threw me off the worst thoughts for just a moment. I exhaled in relief, got up, and walked toward the window. "Where are you? Open up already," came from outside. Yeah, I'm coming. You couldn't just call? You've got a phone, don't you?" I muttered, still half asleep. But when I looked out the window, I didn't see anyone. And the voice, it wasn't no longer by the window. It was coming from the direction of the porch. My mind was still foggy from sleep. I turned and walked toward the porch door, and I almost opened it. Almost. At the last moment, I noticed something, out of my corner of my eye. A hand, knocking on the window beside me. A hand I knew too well. Everything inside me clenched instantly, as if I'd been crushed in a vice. "So, opening or what?" the voice called again, Victor's voice, from outside. But right behind the door, I could feel it, standing there. That's not possible," I whispered, staring at RTM. He shook his head slowly. "I swear to you, if I'm lying, let anyone spit in my face." He leaned closer. It stood there, that thing, and it was talking in Victor's voice. You understand? Talking. That's when I knew for sure it was the Irka. Everything I read that night, it was all real. But there was something else in that article. How to drive it away. What it fears. "And what is it?" I asked quietly. He said, "Fire. More than anything." I ran into the kitchen. All that time it kept knocking on the windows, kept trying to persuade me to open the door, but I didn't fall for it. And it felt that. It started getting more aggressive. It hit the windows harder, banged on the door so hard the whole house shook. And then it started growling. Not with Victor's voice anymore, with its own. I was in the kitchen, my hands shaking, trying to make something, anything that could burn. I grabbed an old t-shirt, wrapped it around a mop, soaked it with solvent, lit a match. Outside, it was going mad, slamming against the door, muttering something under its breath, sometimes peeking into the windows. The main thing was not to look at it. That's what it wanted. With that in mind, I ran to the window, quickly opened it, and threw the burning mop outside. Then immediately shut it again and stepped back. The moment it saw the fire, it reacted instantly. It jumped back, let out a sharp, inhuman sound, and then it ran. It climbed over the fence near the garden and disappeared into the darkness. The very next day, I called my superiors, told them to transfer me somewhere else, anywhere, otherwise I'd resign. They refused. So I wrote my resignation. "Do you regret it?" I asked. "Honestly, Not one bit, he replied. Thank God everything is calm here in the city. He paused for a moment, then added, You know, after I moved, I called my old neighbor back in the village. And? He told me at night his dog goes crazy, barking nonstop. He said once he saw something walking in my yard. Something that stood there and knocked on the windows. A chill ran down my spine. That's terrifying, I muttered. Not even the word for it, Artem replied quietly. I sold the house, by the way, for almost nothing, but I got rid of it. He took a slow breath. And Victor? He was the third one it killed. The same night we first saw it in the field. That's what it was doing there. Silence filled the kitchen. Heavy. Oppressive. Artem reached for the bottle, poured himself another drink, then looked at me. Well, he said quietly. One more?